This is Advisor 3.0, a show designed to help you as a financial advisor elevate your professional practice, transform your clients' lives, and take your business to the next level. I am Abraham Okusoya. Welcome to the show. One of the greatest joys of the business of financial planning is we literally make a living by helping people marry their money and their meaning. And my guest today gets a kick out of doing that with his clients. He has more than a decade experience advising clients on how to find financial freedom. I'm talking about none other than Guy Skinner, who is the managing director of Citygate Consulting, a financial planning business based in London, of course, in London, in the wealth management capital of the world. Guy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Abraham. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
No, it's a privilege to have you on the podcast. Let's dive straight into your journey, the journey that brought you into financial planning and where we are today.
Sure. Well, I fell into financial planning the same as most advisors will probably tell you. It's not something that is spoken about at careers advice when you're at school. It's not something that people would advocate at university. When I was at university, a lot of people on the milk rounds would be from banks and big corporates for graduate schemes and all manner of things. I actually joined a construction firm. Or actually, it was a vertically integrated, the quarries and everything from start to finish on a graduate scheme. But it just wasn't for me. Large corporates, so far removed from the end users of what you were selling. And it was just very, very abstract to me. I didn't enjoy it. Also, the construction side of things was fairly corrupt. I won't say too much about it, but it wasn't the most enjoyable space to be. And look, I moved to financial services, so that's saying something if I think that's less corrupt than construction, but there you go. And look, the penny dropped after a short space of time. Sadly, my dad died when I was 10 years old, and he was only 44. He died of cancer. And when I first joined financial planning, I was told, look, you'll be dealing with things like wills and life insurance, and it all seemed really quite boring. It wasn't going to be exciting. It wasn't going to be dynamic. And the penny really dropped quite quickly because in actual fact, my dad had taken a lot of financial advice the year before he died. It was in 1989, so it was quite a while ago. But he was the managing director of the company, and purely because he had that status in the business, we as his children, my sisters and I and my mum, we had the benefit of a financial plan that was there, lots of life insurance that was there to make the journey a little bit easier after he'd died. And I really connected the dots with that. And it really set me up to succeed in financial planning. And I hadn't realized and thought it was what it is. Prior to that, nobody had ever mentioned it. Nobody had ever put it into the context of how I then found it and thought about it. And had they have done, I would have joined straight from university. I wouldn't have wasted my time in a big corporate. But there was a lot of benefits in that because you then very much realise what you don't want. So that's how I'm here and why I stayed. Yeah.
That's interesting. You've talked on social media. I have seen some of your thread about how your earliest experience, right, shapes who you are, even unconsciously shapes your career choice. You talked about this thing with your dad as the managing director and your mom having to go to work, and you were wondering, why is mom going to work when actually dad's got all this money, he's got a big job? Talk a little bit about that and how, I assume unconsciously, that shapes your choice of a career.
Wow, yeah. I mean, there were so many things. And I started writing on LinkedIn probably about 6 weeks ago, just about the things that I realize now in hindsight that pointed me in this direction, but I never realized. So, yeah, in the late 80s, when we had skyrocketing interest rates and high inflation, my dad even earning what he was earning, which was in today's terms would have been a huge amount as the MD of a company. They couldn't afford the mortgage. My mum had to go and literally pack pizzas at McVitie's to make ends meet so that they could afford each month paying the mortgage. She'd not been in the labour market for the best part of probably 12 years at that point in time. So she had been very much de-skilled, couldn't use, I know your wife's a social worker. My mum originally was a social worker. And she wasn't able to go back into that and earn closer to what she would have been able to have earned. And so it does get you thinking about how can this be the fate when you've got somebody that's supposedly really successful, and if they're struggling, then what would it be like for people that didn't earn as well, or where there wasn't the ability for the mother to go to work, for example, to help make ends meet. But there was a lot of things that my dad did for me before he died, and even in dying, he did a hell of a lot for me because it's helped shape my life, but also, as I say, the life insurance that was there after the event to kind of help support us. But he used to give me 20 pence pocket money per week back in 1987. And after 5 weeks of receiving pocket money of 20 pence per week, he would give me £1 bonus in the fifth week if I could have avoided spending the money on sweets and just things that he didn't think I needed. So he was teaching me about deferred gratification. He was teaching me about investment returns and compounding.
Yeah.
And he was probably smarter than I ever really thought. I mean, he went to Cambridge and he got a first in mechanical engineering, so he wasn't stupid, right? But yeah, I now do that with my own son. So he gets £1 a week instead because that's inflation for you after 38 years or so. But yeah, it's I think every parent should do that. I think in the household, parents should take more responsibility for teaching their children about money. And again, I put something on that same post about the fact that while I like things like Go Henry and I like the apps that are available to reward children for good behavior and so on, we're losing track of just the old fashioned, here's a coin, don't spend it. And, children think that literally tapping a card against an electronic machine is money, and they're losing that tangible aspect of it, which is really important because, again, I remember when I had Saturday jobs and things like that as a teenager, and you'd literally get handed your wages at the end of a shift, and how different that felt to you, and how much it was so much more prized for the fact that I've got it now, I won't let it go easily. And while admittedly after the age of 17, a lot of it was spent on kind of alcohol and going out and having fun, it was still very hard earned. So it was still very much thought about, well, what will this get me? And I was very conscious about that. And I think we've got to instill in people that sort of discipline in relation to money so that they, spend lavishly on the things that they really want, and less so on the things that they need but aren't luxuries and aren't stuff that they really want to do, but they are necessities. And that's what having that tangible amount of money in your hand does, because we have to budget and we think about it more that way.
It's fascinating, right? How even unconsciously, the things that your parents, your dad and your mom did about money impacted you. Even, I mean, some part of this is deliberate by your dad, right? Intended to have an effect on you, and he did that brilliantly. But like, I'm just imagining you as a 10-year-old that's just lost his dad, but somehow you knew the family was you, your mom and your sister were able to carry on, perhaps in your mind because of something dad had done, yet you couldn't join the dots really in your head until you were an adult. Then you found yourself in financial planning of, or in insurance side of things. Then you could understand that, well, actually, this was what dad did, and this is how mom and I were, and my sister were able to survive. It's amazing, and like, even if we don't if we don't do things intentionality is a powerful thing in life with our relationship with our kids. For instance, you mentioned this thing about money. you know Go Henry is what we use with our older daughter, 11-year-old. So maybe we have to think about it a little bit more with the younger one. So we have 5-year-old twins, and my wife has this process of rewarding them with gold coins. And so every week, for good behavior, they will get a coin for things, right? Just things. You go to bed on time, you read a book, and they will pile the coin up. And when they get to at the end of the week, if they get 20 coins, they're not real money. She would turn it into a gift to them, so they can go to the shop and pick a toy within reason. I don't know how much she spends on these things, but my point is, like, then we will also take the coin away from them when they misbehave, or with a threat. We'll threaten to take and our daughters will throw a fit sometimes when we say, oh, you're going to lose 2 coins for doing that. So, like, this thing about being intentional in terms of what we're conveying to the children, the next generation, or not, you can choose not to be intentional, but it will still have an effect on you, as some of the things that your dad did.
For sure. I think if you show the incentives, you see the motivation, and out pops the behavior. That's the same in every walk of life. And if you make it more tangible and more visible so that the children can see the gold coins, then that is going to impact their behavior far more than if it is Go Henry. So it'll be interesting for you to see in years from now the difference between your 5-year-olds and your 11-year-old, and how they'll have a different view of the world and different view of money, rewards, what motivates them, what doesn't motivate them. And it's fascinating, even where I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and you can see the differences between them. And as far as we think as parents, we've been consistent in our behavior with both of them to this point. But of course, there are going to be subtleties. There are going to be differences that result in greater level of risk taking in the younger one, which is a common example because they are told not to do things. They're not told as much not to do things. We are very controlling, if you like, terrible word to think of, but with the eldest, with the firstborn, it's don't do that, don't do this, don't do the other. And actually we're limiting the way that they think and the way that their brain functions, and they get used to the word no, whereas the younger ones, the first one didn't kill themselves with the stairs, so we don't have to worry quite as much. And then they behave differently. They take more risks. They are perhaps more talkative. I'm the youngest of 3, and you would definitely see a difference between myself and my sisters, who are more cautious than I am. I'm more outspoken than they are. I mean, they would never dream of doing something like this, for example. They'd be struck with stage fright, and they just couldn't speak, and they'd find it really scary. So that is all the consequences of your upbringing. But I think going back to what you said a moment ago with connecting the dots on the financial products, for me, a product was always a tangible thing. And that was how I always thought. And that was how my brain always considered these things. So even my mum, again, it's a strange thing. I've not put this post on LinkedIn as yet, but she was actually a financial advisor herself for all of about 3 months. So this was about 1994. It was 4 years after my dad had died. And it was the classic 100 people, who do you know? But even she didn't take any sort of leverage of the fact that her husband had died. And maybe you'd think that could help her go and find more people that wanted to take out life insurance. And to this day, she still has the whole of life policy that was a terrible thing that she bought because it's costing her a hell of a lot of money now that she's nearly 77. And term assurance would have been far better, but that's not what they had at the time. But because I always thought of it as a tangible thing rather than something it's very abstract, isn't it? You can't touch it, you can't feel it. What are these financial products? And I never realized that that's what they were until I was in the industry, and then, or I should say profession. And, even when I go back to 2003, and I had a little bit of money to invest, I couldn't find anything. There was, as far as I was aware, there was no Hargreaves Lansdown that I could have logged on to go and see. It was the early stages of the internet. So it wasn't I wasn't familiar with these things. But I think myself and every other advisor, the more experience we become in doing this, we get further away from the experiences of the layperson.
Yeah.
And we forget how they feel. We forget that to them, life insurance is an abstract thing. And we forget that an ISA or a pension, it's not something you can ever touch or feel, and why that might feel a bit alien. Whereas bricks and mortar and do you want a buy-to-let portfolio and all those sorts of things is far easier for them to get their head around. We've got all of that experience is built up over years. So we've got that confidence that we believe we know at least that the stock market will be temporary declines and it will recover and it will march on. And, we could look at the timeline literally of the investments that you have. And we could show people, look, this is just a flash in the pan. It's going to be fine. But they don't know that. And they are so far removed from the world that we occupy that there is a huge disconnect. And I think that's part of the problem that we are facing as a profession, to try and encourage more people to take advice that aren't necessarily within the top 10% of wealth and top 10% of UK households. And that's the challenge that we all have. Because if we don't service those other people, then there's going to be fewer clients for tomorrow. And actually, UK PLC loses out because we're poorer as a nation in many ways, not just financially, but actually experiences. Because if people aren't as wealthy, then they're not going to have as much money to spend on doing things that they should. If people aren't insuring themselves properly, then they're not going to have the experience that I had when sadly a parent dies. And that, if I could wish one thing for everybody, it's that they would have the experience I had if their parent dies, because life wasn't easy. It was still hard, but it could have been so much harder than it actually was.
So let's dive into the business side of things. How did you come to set up Citygate as a business? What was the journey that led up to setting up the business?
Yeah, so where I started in 2008, I was self-employed. I had no salary. I was 100% commission. And because I had this kind of superpower, I knew that I had something that everyone should be interested in. So I started with a diary and a phone, and I had to cold call, and that was how I would go and find clients. And I just targeted lawyers. So they're very easy people to find. You look on the Law Society, you can find every single registered lawyer in the UK. I didn't like so much looking at the FCA register as a source of potential clients. I didn't get on as well with people that already thought they knew everything there was to know about finance. And, I was 27 at the time as well. So it was quite an easy thing to challenge. But the thing that the other thing in your armory, if you like, if you're dealing with a solicitor, is you can have a rough guess as to their age, because you can find out how many years qualified there are, and that will give you an indication. So I only really targeted people that were a similar age to me, so a similar point in their life. We'd have common interests, and I just knew they earn very good money. Stereotypically, as solicitors, they're a bit more cautious than most people, and they like to have a plan. They don't like to freestyle so much. They're also not as bonus driven as people that are working in banks and other places that have got a bonus culture. So it made it far easier. And in the first 12 months of my advising, I'd done more than £500,000 in commission from a standing start. I brought on 139 clients, and I broke all the records that the company had. The company that I was at is no longer. They went under in 2014 post RDR. The juggernaut that was just initial commissions could not be sustained post RDR in that sort of sales culture. So I left there, and I set up with somebody else that had come out of the company. They absconded though after about 2 years. I'd been trying to get rid of them anyway because it wasn't an equal relationship. And then I joined a network because I thought I needed a bit more stability. And again, in joining a network, I found a lot of things that I really didn't like. The direction of travel was always to their influenced funds, where there was a clip of the ticket for them. And that just made me feel horrible. And I stopped doing any investment work, in fact, for a period of about 7 months while I had my Form A in to be directly authorised. And that was when I started Citygate. I literally wanted to help people with a blank piece of paper from outset as always being the starting point, rather than having a defined solution before anybody came to me, knowing exactly what was going to happen. And I also wanted, I mean, the reason why I called it Citygate was because it was helping people get through the gates to understand the city. And it's the fact that it is this kind of closed shop. Right. And you are kind of, a lot of people are excluded from it and they don't know how to get into it. So that we are the gate that they can come through to help them understand, and we'll hold their hand and explain everything to them so that they can be enlightened. We were also based by Moorgate, which kind of helped as well, because that literally is one of the gates. And originally it was just me, and I slowly but surely found my feet post RDR, because I didn't really have a clue about what would this service proposition look like. When I was the company that I was self-employed at, we would literally hold a follow-up meeting with a client after 6 months, solely to try and get a referral or to top up a policy. It wasn't about a proper service plan. I mean, these clients were typically under 30, so there was less of a need or less value in looking at cash flow modelling, because they hadn't had children yet. They didn't know how many they were going to have. Were they going to pay school fees? There's too many assumptions, too many what ifs, too many unknowns for it to be as valuable to a 50-year-old. So, but we did sketch it out. We did work through it, but it wasn't what people would necessarily is full fat financial planning right now. But it was financial planning of sorts. There was some really, really good things about it. The training was incredibly good. Fact finding was something that was just beaten into us in terms of, not physically, but we had to get really good at asking questions. And we did understand to a pretty good level what the prospective clients wanted to do with their lives, to the extent that we would sketch it out. So it wasn't quite Paul Armson's sketch, the bucket sketch, if you like, but we could sketch roughly what their lives would look like, and I would have a rough idea based on knowing the law firm, what their prospective earnings would be if they got to equity partner status. And I got to know really quite well the nuances of lawyers in the city, and I knew all of their employee benefits. So that gave some sort of credibility to what I was saying, and some sort of confidence to them that actually this person knew what he was talking about. And I would literally ask for a referral as somebody left the meeting after the first hour meeting. They'd come to the office after a cold call. I would say at the start of the meeting, look, thank you for coming along and being open-minded enough on the back of a cold call to meet with me. If you find this meeting useful, you might be able to think of a couple of other people that look like you, friends, colleagues, that could find it useful as well. And I would just leave that as kind of an open-ended statement at the start. After the course of an hour, having done a discovery, fact find, and sketched out what I thought their life was going to look like, I think they found that quite an impressive process, if you like. And I'd certainly never seen anything like it prior to joining that business. And I would ask, look, do you know of anybody? I said at the top, if you found it valuable. And very often they'd say, yeah, actually, that was really useful. They'd already booked in my diary to come in for a second meeting, at which point that would be when I would present them the solutions. But they would commonly give me three people. And that's how, from standing start in 12 months, 139 people became clients. So it was the exception. So they were the best numbers that anybody had done within the company to that point in time. And I don't think it was beaten before 2014. I left in 2010. But I strongly believe a lot of people could do this. I think RDR has changed things. The lack of commission has widened that advice gap. How you would start a business now of cold calling 27-year-old lawyers, asking for fees to make pension contributions and getting them to take out critical illness cover and put money into an ISA, perhaps wouldn't work in the same way. And the tragedy of that is that so many of those clients are still with me today. And so many of those clients are now equity partners at US firms and Magic Circle firms, and they're earning seven figures. And as they've all made equity partner at these firms, they've had the like of Coots and all sorts of companies like that all over them wanting their wealth to be managed. And they've stuck with me because I was there when they were nobodies. And now there is somebody that everybody wants to be all over. Well, where were you when I was insignificant? And I think that means a lot. And sadly, we're going to lose, with the current way that fees work and the current way that businesses operate, we're going to lose out on helping those people unless we make some changes, which I guess is something I'll come on to in a moment.
Yeah, this is such a powerful thing. There's so much I can pick from this. thread around the bloodbath, in my view, that you went through, just finding your feet in the industry. I mean, like, that is very tough, right? So, but we'll come back to that. Give us a sense of where the business is today. Tell us a little bit. Give us some metrics to understand the business. Tell us a little bit about the team, just to give us um, a good idea of the amazing stride that you've made in the last decade or so.
Yeah, so it's been relatively exponential in the last couple of years, the way that the growth has occurred, which is going to be the same with any company, isn't it? For years, it was me as a one person entity, and then I found a very reliable second person, and he's been with me for 6 years, and he's an absolute godsend. We wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for him having joined me and being the safe pair of hands that he is. But there's now 8 of us, and we're currently recruiting for a 9th person. We operate in the employee benefits space. And I think the future really of what we do is actually getting into the workplace. It's educating one-to-many in one fell swoop as opposed to one-to-one meetings. That's how we can capture several people that aren't in the top 10% of earners. They don't need full advice. They don't necessarily, 90% of people stay within their default fund within their workplace pension scheme. That is a criminal thing. That really is something that has to change, because while your 25-year-olds who have got 35, 40 years till they're going to start taking benefits aren't in 100% equities and aren't in, obviously that's not taken as advice, anybody listening, but why you're not in a higher risk portfolio when you've got so long to go, and I know that's madness. I know Nest would disagree, and they would say actually it should be more cautious to start with in case they have a bad experience and then decide to pull out of pensions altogether. But with a bit of education in the workplace, that can be overcome. So I think that's kind of a big challenge for advisors. And I was at the Dimensional Conference not too long ago, and they were explaining there's 6.9 advisors per 10,000 adults in the UK. And look, that ratio really doesn't work, does it? And unless we can find a method of conveying things on a one-to-many basis and making it more real for people so they understand just simple things like how to budget. And I spoke earlier today I posted on LinkedIn, somebody put something around the fact that we should be in schools and teaching in schools. And while I don't disagree with that, I absolutely think we should. And we should start in helping parents educate their children, as we've kind of said already. But actually the problem is far more short term than trying to teach the next generations. We've got a shortage of people knowing what to do right now. So we've got to start sorting that out right now. It's too late to just go and speak to your 11-year-old, my 6-year-old, your 5-year-olds, and get them to understand some simple things about what's a mortgage, what's debt, what's good debt, what's bad debt, so on and so forth. We've got people in their 30s, 40s that are making terrible decisions around money because they just don't have that insight, or they don't have that support and a bit more confidence to make the right choice. And, they aren't in their workplace scheme. They are missing out on matched contributions. They're not getting the tax relief. They're not investing in the manner that they should do. They're not taking life insurance. They don't have income protection. They haven't written their will. The number of business owners I've met that haven't got a lasting power of attorney, they don't even have shareholders agreements. I know I'm straying into legal aspects here, but this is really simple stuff. It's not like rocket science where it takes you years to get your head around how something works. It's pretty straightforward. And we've got to square that away. We've got to solve that challenge, because they will be the clients of the future if we maintain the methodology as how we're working right now. But my expectation is, just as I look back to see how far we've come post RDR, I think in a further 10 to 12 years from now, I think it'll look entirely different to what it currently looks like. And I want us, and what I'm really keen with the team and why we're growing so quickly, is I want us all to be on the front foot with disrupting financial services in the UK, because there are too many people resting on their laurels. There are too many people that have just got used to it working the way that it works. And they need to be upset in some respects. We've got to disrupt ourselves to a certain extent, because somebody else will if we don't. And it's for the societal good. There will be betterment across society, and everyone, I believe, will be, even if it's just a little bit, they'll be happier if they are making educated decisions with their money.
Fascinating stuff. So the structure of the team right now is yourselves and Arthur as the financial planners, and then you have three para planners, beneath you supporting you, and then broadly speaking, what, three admin, including the chap who sort of has the employee benefits account. Is that how you're structured as a team?
So you've done your research. I can tell you've looked at the website, right? So you're close, but things have evolved in the last six to 12 months. So the role we're looking for at the moment is a benefits administrator, so somebody that can actually add people to policies, remove people from policies, and be the conduit between us and the employers and the HR managers, the FDs. We are looking to grow that substantially over the next 12 months. I think we're onto something in as much as not many advisory companies do employee benefits and do private client. The fact is that we work with a lot of company owners, and if they've got a trajectory of getting from A to B, they are going to have to grow that company somehow. Okay, it might not be as much headcount if we can get AI working to the extent that it possibly could, but you've still got to retain those people. You've still got to recruit new people, and you need to have something compelling to keep those people. And I think financial education and wellness is definitely part of that journey, as well as, look, I enjoy helping the business owners and solving all the challenges. Typically, there'll be a list of about 20 or 30 things that actually a company owner needs to do that they haven't done, shareholders agreement being one of them. Holly will actually start advising in April. So there'll be Arthur, myself, and Holly. To this point, I've kind of handed on some client relationships. I've retained some, but I've handed over a few to Arthur, a few to Holly. Imogen joined us a year ago. I've been really lucky that the people that I've recruited have been, one, very bright, and two, they get it. They understand it pretty quickly. They are passing their exams very quickly. So typically it's 12 to 18 months and everyone's diploma level qualified. I'm trying to indoctrinate them into my way of thinking so that they can understand why I'm really passionate about this and why
you mean brainwash them?
Well, yeah, but why it's so important that we do it and do it well. And something that I've said to everyone in the team is know who you want to help and why. If you can be passionate about who you're going to help, then there'll never be a day that you can't get out of bed, that you just think, oh, this is too much, or I'm bored. Because even if it is, you take it down to the base level, even if it is that you're helping people with their retirement savings, building that pot and insuring them, remove that. I've been to clients' funerals. I've seen their children after their parent has died. I know that I've made their life better than it would have been because of the actions I took. And that is the stuff that really gets me going. And so when I say to Holly, right, who do you want to help? Well, Holly really wants to help people that are going through divorce. She wants to help them have a really good experience in what could be one of the worst moments of their life. Well, if you keep that front and center of your mind, it never becomes a dull day-to-day task. And even the people that we have that are doing administration in the background, they understand the importance of getting that letter of authority out and getting it back in a timely manner. We are changing people's lives with what we do. And it's not just a small menial task. It's really important. And it means the world to us because it means the world to them. And, Imogen's come to us from the legal world as well. So she was a litigator for 10 years. She really wants to help. I think it's probably going to be predominantly females, but she just wants to help people get out of law. We find there are too many people slaving away, earning a fortune that they don't need. And they just don't realize that they don't need to earn the amount of money that they are earning. But they also have their lifestyle creep and they will start spending money. I had one client once upon a time, his words described to me, originally we were shopping at Sainsbury's and then it became Waitrose. And now it might be Harrods occasionally on the odd weekend where we'll treat ourselves. Well, is that really required? Do you have to work a 7-day week and be on call in the legal profession? Some of these people are doing billable hours of 2,000 billable hours a year. That's just the billable hours. Think about all the extra time, the commuting, the face-to-face stuff, just being there, the business development, the networking, all of that sort of stuff that they're doing on top. How do you get time to see your family if you're doing that? And for what end? To have a load of money that you didn't actually need. And, some of the most unhappy people I've met have been solicitors. And in a lot of cases, you're going through their insurance applications and you're looking at mental health issues where, they've had to have counselling and they've really struggled. And it's because probably a weight of expectation that's been placed upon their shoulders. But also they are just working incredibly hard. And why? If you didn't need to, why do it? Unless you really love it. But I'm going to challenge the fact that they really love it, because I don't think many of them do. So that's who Imogen wants to work with. And we're trying to build out this framework of, well, who do you want to serve and who do you serve best? But I still want to reach the masses. I still want us to get actually, like I say, to disrupt UK financial planning and get this message out to thousands and thousands of people. Because, well, if not millions, but look, maybe that's a bit too ambitious. I don't know. But look, we have to change things because the current trajectory is not great. I saw it in the press the other day. You probably saw it as well. The advisor numbers are dwindling, and the younger people coming into this is falling as well. So we're not attracting people, perhaps because we're not getting the right message out there. We're not making people aware of the power of what this can be. And I'm a prime example. So as you said earlier, I was 27 and I'd not connected the dots. How embarrassing is that when I think of it in that regard, that it took me to be actually on the other side of the fence for me to realise the value of what I was doing.
I don't think that you not connecting the dot at 27 or whatever was a problem. I didn't connect the dot at that point as well. But like there is clearly work to be done for the profession around bringing in the next generation. The problem is, like, we've made it too hard. It is too hard to become a financial planner. I mean, the experience that you went through, I would wager that if you put 100 people, 100 young 20-something-year-old through the experience that you went through of handing them, a contact list or going to find a contact list and having to make phone calls to get the client in and all that stuff. Now, you are the exception that proved the rule. You now set up the business, in 2014. Then now, you got an incredible business, 8 people growing the business. I don't believe that 10 out of 100 will survive that, what you went through. So, and now one might argue, I will argue, it's even harder, to go through that journey. So, of course, the journey seems that it has to be what you're doing with Imogen and others, which is a financial planning firm like yourselves and others employ these people. What we had, your generation of advisors, and even the generation older than you. I mean, you and I are probably the same. Like the older generation, I'm talking just people in their 50s. The firm owners, the majority of firm owners and advisors today, they are the people who were salespeople first and foremost, and then they become financial planners. They learn financial planning. And yes, some of them still haven't learned it. Yes, I can say that, like we still have a whole chunk of people who have, they're good salespeople, maybe good advisors, but financial planning, completely different. The generation of people, Imogen and others, are people who are first and foremost financial planning, and then they still got to learn all the sales skills and all the emotional intelligence and all that stuff. So to me, unless you find, if I was a younger a younger person coming to the program, but to this profession, unless I find a Guy Skinner, who can take a risk on me, put me through my paces, the qualifications and all that stuff, train me, put me in front of clients, ask me all these powerful questions about who I want to serve, create a compelling vision of the future, I've got no chance. So I, I really don't know how we solve this challenge of bringing more and more people. And look, you're very special, because I will wager even the good firms, if I speak to 10 good guys, financial advisors, maybe 3 of them are looking to recruit or grow the business in a meaningful way. There is a whole chunk of people who just don't want to, they're happy with where they are. So anyway, that's why, like, I don't know. How do we solve this?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's depressing the way that you've just described that. To be
I'm
honest,
sorry.
But, look, I have genuinely said, and I recruited Arthur on the basis of this, that I could teach anybody how to earn £100,000 a year by the time they're 30, and I genuinely mean that. You need a little bit of IQ and a little bit of EQ, but not loads. And it's about being persistent and intentional and knowing your purpose. And that's why I do ask that question of, look, who do you really want to help? And there is an abundance of opportunity out there. And I think people, okay, it's going to be hard to start if you're going to go directly authorized. And if you were to go via a network, they're going to take 30% of your turnover from you, which isn't so attractive. But you could do it to get yourself started. And if you live in your community and you want to help people that look similar to you and have had similar experiences or have had similar problems, why have we not got a financial planning company that solely wants to help single parents? Why have we not got a financial planning company that wants to solely help single dads that don't have custody of their kids? Like, pick something that resonates with you, be known for that, and go and get it. And you'll find you'll be a magnet and there'll be loads of people coming to you. You don't necessarily have to have had the infrastructure of somebody that is your boss to do that. If you've got the desire to help that sort of person, then you will find it within yourself. And you can be a member of a network, and the network should do more to try and, university rounds and getting people in. And forget university, you don't have to be university educated. You could come straight from school aged 16, 18 and find a way to grow within this as well. Life experience does help for sure. And when I was 27 and I started, a lot of the other guys on the floor, it was mostly guys, there was a handful of girls. They were younger than I was. And the fact that I was about 3 or 4 years older, you could see a big difference between the life experience that I had versus them, just with the fact, I'd already bought a property as a buy-to-let and they didn't have a buy-to-let property. So there was quite a few things that I could talk about that others couldn't. So I do appreciate that helps. But second careerists, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that are now finding themselves disillusioned with their flexibility. They're being told to go back to the office. They're not in control of their own destiny. Well, look, maybe take it by the scruff of the neck and decide that you'll do something different and help people in your community that you really want to help. I mean, look, maybe I should start my own courses to train people as to how to do this sort of stuff, because, again, somebody's got to do it. And I was the beneficiary of, I found Paul Armson and I found other people, and there are some great voices out there, the Trap guys, Alan Smith, Nick Lincoln, and so, there's a lot of really good people putting really good information out there. And I don't know if it's being heard by people outside of the industry so much, or the profession, I should say, but we've got to find a way of doing that. And maybe St James's Place putting an advert on between the rugby in the Six Nations, maybe that gets people a little bit more interested and intrigued as to, well, what's that? And we've got to make more noise. And that's, that's why I'm here in part, because we need to start making more noise about these things, and we need to get people excited about it. We need to get people energized about it, because if we don't, it's all just going to fade away and die. And it's not just us as a profession that will fade away and die. There's a lot of future at stake for people in the UK. If I look at the fact that there was 2.1 million insurance policies sold last year, we're not even scratching the surface of what should be done. And I think there's a lot of advisors that are there at the moment that they are just going through the motions. Yes, they're not recruiting, they're not growing. And I don't understand why there isn't that ambition to be more explosive and dynamic and actually pushing boundaries here. But I've been at conferences where people have talked about being full financial planners. And I've described to them how when I was 27, I was taking on a 27-year-old. And yes, it was pretty much that I knew that I'd have a budget of £500. They'd put about £300 a month net into a pension, 150 into an ISA, and they'd take out a critical illness policy for £50 a month. And, people have said to me, you were just product pushing. I'm a real financial planner. And then you carry on the conversation for 5 more minutes, and it turns out they're not even advising on insurance. Well, how can you say you're a holistic financial planner if you're not looking at insurance? And if that is what a lot of people are doing, then, I would love to even challenge and say on a risk profile questionnaire, where's the question about do you have insurance, and is it adequate to ensure that you could still make your pension contributions if you couldn't work for 6 years or 5 years, whatever? It doesn't exist on the risk profile questionnaire. Well, and I know that somebody's whole retirement is in jeopardy if they don't have that. And there's so many advisors just ignoring that altogether because it doesn't add to their AUM, it doesn't add to their subsequent sale value. And some people might add that it detracts from it because it's giving you a compliance risk with no added value of sale. What rubbish is that if we're living in a world where people are so focused on that, not helping the person that they're looking at and not helping a community of people that they really want to support?
Fascinating stuff, Guy. It's been really interesting, learning your journey and your thoughts on a lot of these things. But we have to wrap this up. You heard Jake earlier, my producer, who said if we don't wrap this up on time, he's going to pull the plug, literally, physically. So we don't want him to do that. But just in wrapping up, so 8 people in the business today. You and I are sitting here, let's say 5 years time, or if you want to go longer, a decade's time. Describe Citygate for me. Describe the things that you've been able to accomplish in that time.
Sure. It's funny. I struggle with long time frames, and again, it's the 14th of April next year. I'll be to the day the same age my dad was when he died, and I guess psychologically that's why I perhaps struggle by thinking of long time frames because I might not be here. And I don't think headcount is necessarily the metric that would be the most important thing because I do genuinely think that AI is going to help support a lot of the client journey, a lot of the back office. When we look across the North Sea and into the Nordics, where we would typically use 2 paraplanners, they'll use a quarter of a person as an equivalency. So,
what metric would you use? Would you use revenue? Would you use AUM? What would you use?
The number of people's lives that I've impacted. So if it's not into the tens of thousands 10 years from now, and look, hundreds of thousands, let's make it scary for myself because there's different ways of doing it as well, isn't there? Maybe it is by helping and influencing other advisors to help more people. But I want to use technological solutions in the workplace to get to thousands and thousands of people and just move the dial on this. And it doesn't have to be expensive for them. It doesn't have to be a percentage of assets model. And it's going to be hard. It's not going to be an easy thing to do. I'm aware of that. But anything good in life has never been achieved by going down the easy path. You know that as well as anybody, right?
Absolutely. Guy Skinner, thank you very much for your time and wisdom. Thank you for being so honest and forthright with your views and sharing the journey that you've been on. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I truly believe that our listeners have taken a lot of insight from the conversation. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Abraham. I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
That's a wrap on today's show. Massive thanks to my production crew, especially Jake Osha, Melissa Canham, and the entire team. And of course, to our sponsor, Timeline, the market-leading provider of integrated planning technology and model portfolio service to advisors. I do hope you've enjoyed today's show. Head over to Apple Podcast and give us your review there. Until next time, goodbye.